In late December 1959, a quiet Maryland town awoke to something it had never experienced before. There was no forced entry, no obvious suspect, no clear motive. Just a woman found dead in her bed and a growing realization that something had gone terribly wrong during the night. More than 60 years later, this murder remains unsolved. Not because no one cared, but because it occurred at a time when assumptions often replaced urgency and silence was mistaken for peace. This is the story of someone who had plans for the next day, Christmas cards half written, and no reason to believe she was in any danger. This is the story of Henrietta Reagan. Hello friends, my name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders, where we explore the unsolved cases that still haunt America. Leonardtown, Maryland in 1959 was a town built on routine and familiarity. Life moved slowly here. Families had known one another for generations, and daily life revolved around work, church, and community obligations. Southern Maryland was still largely rural. Farming and fishing shaped the local economy, and while the Patuxent River Naval Air Station nearby brought a growing military presence to the region, Leonardtown itself remained insulated. New faces stood out. Reputations mattered. Privacy was respected, sometimes to a fault. This was also a time when violence against women was often misunderstood or quietly minimized. Crimes that disrupted the image of a peaceful town were uncomfortable, and uncomfortable questions were not always pursued with urgency. Within that world, Henrietta Elizabeth Reagan was quietly living her life. At 44 years old, Henrietta was recently widowed. Her husband Frank had died just 11 months earlier on Valentine's Day. After his death, she began the difficult process of rebuilding her life alone. She was described as petite and attractive with dark hair. She was a community volunteer, a musician, and she had worked as a bookkeeper at Thrift Oil Company for 17 years, directly across the street from where she lived. Henrietta had just completed building a small 4-room house in the Tudor Hall Estates development. In a tragic twist, the landscaping on her new home was finished the very day she was murdered. She had only just begun settling into this new chapter of independence when it was violently taken from her. Saturday, December 5, 1959, dawned cool and quiet. The night before, Henrietta had dinner with her sister and brother-in-law, Christine and John Gardner. Afterward, John drove her home. He stayed briefly watching television while Henrietta addressed Christmas cards. He left around 10:30 p.m., and that was the last time anyone is known to have seen her alive. The following day, when Henrietta failed to show up for work, her employer, Maurice Thrift, became concerned. This was not like her. While she did occasionally oversleep, she always answered the phone when he called. This morning, she did not. He went to her home and found the back door unlocked. When he stepped inside and saw Henrietta in her bed, still wearing her pajamas and neatly covered, he immediately knew something was wrong. He ran back to his office to call the police and a doctor. Later, her time of death would be estimated between midnight and 2:30 a.m. The St. Mary's County Sheriff's Department and the Maryland State Police responded, but from the beginning the investigation faced serious setbacks. Police initially assumed that because she was in bed with the covers pulled up, she had had a heart attack. For 3 critical days, the crime scene was not properly secured. By the time the seriousness of the crime was fully understood, much of the scene had already been lost. Dozens of people entered and exited the house, unintentionally destroying or contaminating evidence that could have been vital. Despite this, investigators determined that Henrietta had been raped and strangled in her bedroom. She had bruises on her neck and ear, several teeth had been knocked out, and her wallet was missing. Investigators believed she may have scratched or bitten her attacker during the violent struggle. Neighbors reported seeing a light green 1955 Ford parked in front of the house at about 2 a.m. The car had white license plates, which could have been Virginia or temporary tags for Maryland. Some evidence did survive. A nearly perfect palm print and fingerprints were found on the foot of the bed and on the bathroom wall. Strands of hair were recovered along with blood on the bedding that did not belong to Henrietta. 5 miles east of Leonardtown, a gray cashmere sweater Henrietta had worn the night before was discovered in a ditch off Route 245 near Hollywood, Maryland. Police believed it had been thrown from a moving car. Unfortunately, before its significance was known, the family who found it had washed the sweater. Investigators also examined those close to Henrietta's daily routine. Fingerprints were taken from all 14 employees at Thrift Oil Company. Police knew a key to Henrietta's home was kept at the office in case of emergency, although it was unclear how many employees knew that it was there. At one point, law enforcement issued a bulletin across 13 states seeking 2 men described as rough-looking white males traveling in a 1949 black sedan with rusted brown patches and Tennessee license plates. Why these men were sought and what connection they may have had to Henrietta's murder was never publicly disclosed. The murder sent shockwaves through Leonardtown. Residents pressured law enforcement for answers, struggling to understand how such violence could occur in a town built on familiarity and trust. Henrietta was laid to rest in the cemetery of St. Aloysius Gonza Church following Requiem Mass. But the sense of closure that funerals often bring never came. Instead, the unanswered questions settled over the town like a quiet, lasting unease. Those questions regarding her final hours remain deeply troubling. Why would a violent attacker take the time to neatly cover her body? Was robbery the motive, or was the missing wallet a distraction? Did the washing of the sweater destroy critical evidence? Were the unidentified fingerprints and blood ever fully pursued? And who were the 2 men from Tennessee, quietly mentioned and then seemingly forgotten? Was this the work of strangers passing through, or was it someone local who understood routines, keys, and trust? If you would like to explore this case further, author Leslie Ladon took a deep dive in her recent book, Killing Henrietta, which is linked below. Henrietta Reagan's story is a quiet tragedy. She had just completed a new home. She was rebuilding her life after loss, and on the very day that new beginning became tangible, it was taken from her. Her murder stands as a reminder of how quickly opportunity can vanish when evidence is lost and assumptions guide early decisions. Today, all that remains are fragments, a washed sweater, unidentified fingerprints, and a case that never received the clarity it deserved. What do you believe happened that night? Was the answer close to home, or did it leave Leonardtown long ago? Please leave any thoughts or theories in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.